Good afternoon. How are you doing today? Fantastic. So we have a small crowd here, and I was asking Scott, what kind of people are here in the audience, and he said, well, it looks like in the middle of the day it's going to be a bunch of some business people, some open source people, quite a wide range. And so I was trying to figure out how to find a talk that would be good for everyone involved. And I don't know if this fits the crowd here. So maybe I'll ask a couple quick questions, and then we can figure it out, and I can gear it towards what you guys want. How many people are here because you want to find stuff out for your business? Three people. And how many people are open source developers? All right, the same 3 people plus 2 more. Okay. How many people are familiar with Sourceforge.net? Okay. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this presentation out, and if you guys are falling asleep, I will just switch and start, if you have technical questions about Sourceforge.net, we can go into it. This is a little higher level on that. But we'll just start and see how we do, and if you give me that yawning look, I'll move on to something else. Anyway, today I want to talk about leveraging open source in the enterprise. Obviously, open source in general has been making large strides in the enterprise in general. It started off being sort of in the back door and has been making a lot of strides in the past few years. So for those of you who want to find out more about using open source in your business, this is the talk for you. Software, the way it's being developed today, is a lot different than more of the traditional sense, where you have 10 people in a room, and those people are sitting there and they don't get a lot of feedback, and after about a year and a half they come out with a CD and say, aha, here we go, here's your software. And people try it, and then they have to wait another 6 months for a service pack. Open source development is a lot different in that you get a lot of people working together. You leverage the internet to allow people from all over the world, and at least for Sourceforge.net we have over 190 countries visit the site every single day. Have people working together, and you have that fast iteration, right? So that a lot of software, there might be a new release every single day or once a week. It happens very, very quickly, where they get feedback very, very fast. They make those changes, and then they send it back out to their installed base. And so you get this very, very tight iteration schedule, which is very, very efficient because you know where you're going, right? Your customers will tell you exactly where things are going. And that's fairly unique to the open source model, but you're starting to see more and more people do that sort of thing. So very fast iterations, peer review, lots of people looking at the source code, a lot of people making suggestions and feedback. That is the open source development model. And of course the benefit, and I think a lot of us already know the benefit, you get better software because as you progress, the bugs get fixed. A lot of people trying out the software saying, if I ran this on my Palm Pilot and I was trying to run, X application and it crashed, you find out about that right away, where oftentimes not many people would test that in the more traditional sense because there's just not enough testers out there. Improved responsiveness, efficient use of resources. It doesn't take as many people to make software since they're all working together. So today I want to talk about 3 ways of using open source in the enterprise. One is to consume open source software. There's a lot of great open source software out there. Some of you may know about it, some of you may not. The second thing is to actually develop open source software. You may find that it will be a great cost savings to you to work with other companies in the same field in order to make great software. And the third way is to use the methodologies of open source software inside your enterprise. It may not be open source software, but use that fast iteration in order to make the software to get all the benefits that open source provides. So, number 1, using open source software in your corporation. Software costs a lot of money. If the company goes out of business, it's a big problem. Using open source is in your company is a great benefit. And there's a lot of software out there. Sourceforge.net alone today has 93,000 applications. 93,000. Not all of them finished quality yet, but they're in progress. And then elsewhere on the web, there's a lot of open source software too. And we'll go through some of those gems out there that may help you in your enterprise. So a couple things with Sourceforge.net. If you're not aware of it, it's the world's largest open source development website today. We are getting very, very close to our 1 millionth registered user. It's about 5 years old, And today it's about 995,000, and we add about 700 new users every single day, so it's hard for me to keep the slides correct. About 93,000 projects. Those are open source projects that are being developed on there. We're doing about 10 million page views a day. Alexa, which is an Amazon company, ranks the top 100 sites, English-speaking sites in the world, and we're hovering about 100 out of 100,000. So it's a very large site. We do about 1.4 million downloads every single day. These are people consuming software and using that in their enterprise. And it's big. So all the software that's on SourceForge.net, our only requirement is it's considered open source, and that's based off the open source definition, which I'm sure you've heard about in previous talks. But it's about an 8-part, I think it's, or no, I'm sorry, it's 10 bullet points. But the things you care about is A, you get to view the source code, you get to distribute it, redistribute it to anyone you want. You're encouraged to make derived works. If it's something that the software you're downloading is close to what you want, but not quite, make a copy of it. Make the modifications, and then either bring that back to the original author or come out with a new version. And then make that a new version so that you can fork it if you want. And that's your rights based off the open source definition. 93,000 applications on SourceForge.net, you get those rights, as with many of the other sites on there. And of course, number 7 is an important one too, the distribution of license. The rules in which you receive the software from somebody, you have to carry on to that next person. So that's one of the benefits, and that's why open source continues to kind of live on after someone has modified it and moved forward. Yeah, I'll do that one. So real quick, so SourceForge.net, what the heck is it? Is it a nonprofit? Is it just out there in the middle of nowhere? It's actually part of OSTG, the Open Source Technology Group, part of a company called VA Software. Probably besides SourceForge.net, our other largest site is Slashdot, which if you're any true open source person, you probably visit there on a regular basis too. We have NewsForge, which is a great site for learning the latest news on open source. We've got Robin Miller here, who's the editor-in-chief of OSTG here, keeping me honest. We got Linux.com, a whole bunch of sites. ThinkGeek, which is a great way to buy great gadgets and spend money. Money's good. But all combined, it's about 16 million unique visitors every single month visit our network. It's about 250 million page views. So SourceForge.net, we are a for-profit company. We sell advertising on the site, and it helps us fund the open source things that we provide to the community, which is our main focus. So what does SourceForge.net offer to the community? A number of features. Of all 993,000 open source projects on here get the same tools to be successful, to allow them to collaborate, to build a micro community so that they can work together and develop software. So I'm just going to run down what we give each one, but these tools allow people to collaborate. A lot of people who work on these projects have never met each other. They join a project and it's all done virtually via email. A lot of the projects are, only 30% of our traffic is from the US. 70% of our traffic is from overseas. Germany is our second largest country after the US, right? Non-English speaking. So it's a truly worldwide phenomenon, and it's exciting to be a part of it. So anyway, the first thing we do is we give everyone a project summary page. This is a great way to provide information to your users on exactly what the software is about. We have something called a software categorization, software map that tells you, okay, is this written in PHP? Is this written in C? What is the category it's supposed to do? Is it about CAD/CAM systems? Is it about desktop application? You can find out a lot of information about that. It also gives you the activity ranking, which tells you how active is this project compared to the other 100,000 projects that we currently host. The more active, generally the faster iterations that are happening there, and the bigger the community and the more successful the project happens to be. We give every project a home page, straight HTML, although they can certainly do PHP. We give people MySQL access. They can do dynamic pages, and this allows them to have kind of something that's unique. They can do screenshots. They can do a lot of other things. It's a little bit like GeoCities, but we give that for every project. Each project gets 100 megabytes of storage. All of this, of course, is at no cost. We provide it to everyone for free, as long as it's an open source application. Forums. We provide forum software that allows all the different projects to communicate. Again, this is great for virtual teams. There's typically discussions on just about anything. These are new features that you want, whatnot. No project, whether it's proprietary or open source, is bug-free. This is probably the most popular tool that we have. People, users of this particular software package, whatever it happens to be, submitting issues, submitting bugs, giving feedback that's going to help make the new version that much better. And the software can be assigned to somebody, and then they can go through and say, okay, I fixed the bug, and close the ticket, and it's a great way to increase the quality that open source has. Support requests. Similar to bugs, but it's somebody who doesn't understand how to use the software. They're confused. I can't install it. It doesn't install properly, which could be a bug or a feature. But this is a great way to say, help me. And either the community can help and close those tickets out, or somebody else can. Feature requests. What's going to come out with the 2.0 version? Let's get feedback from that community so we can work on that release early, release often mentality. Let's get the new version of the software out as fast as possible. So we have a tool that takes in all that information, so the admins of that project can be aware of what should be out there next. Mailing lists. Sourceforge.net hosts about 30,000 mailing lists. Each project, each micro community, if you will, can generate their own mailing list. They can have as many as they want. That allows their community to be able to communicate via email, which is always a little challenging for us because with a lot of the spam stuff going on there and whatnot, it takes a lot of our NetOps team to just keep that clean. But it's very, very popular. And CVS. CVS is a version control software package, open source, of course, that allows people to work on source code simultaneously. So somebody in Greece can work with somebody in Ireland, and they don't have to worry about overwriting each other's changes. Of course, there's always a history too. So if there's a bug, if someone introduces a problem, you can always roll back the changes that had happened. So you can see exactly who submitted which fix or put which module in at any one time. And CVS, I mean, most of you are probably familiar with it. I believe Sourceforge.net today is probably either the first or second largest repository of source code in the world. I think we're close to 600 gigabytes of pure source. And all of that is in our CVS repository. And finally, well, the last two things is the file release. Once you, oh yes, you, sir. Yes, I would say that our number one request for that would be Subversion. Subversion is a new version, sort of a CVS replacement, if you will, that has a lot of features, that has been in development now for about 4 years and has finally come to the place where it's good enough. We are seriously looking at it. We'd like to roll it out in 2005. One of the issues we have for rolling out Subversion is that we have 600 gigabytes of data and hundreds of thousands of people downloading data all the time. So we have to just make sure that we can scale properly, because it is on our roadmap. Arch, not so much, but Subversion, yes. I believe we're gonna try to do both initially. It will be too hard for people and too hard for us, I think, to have everybody migrate simultaneously. So we will give new projects the option. Which way do you want to go? And probably not make it very easy for people to move from one to the other. But I would imagine eventually we will have to migrate to one final solution, because the support team that we have is fairly small. So maintaining multiple source control systems is taxing. Anyway, so file release systems. Once you decide, okay, we're ready for an official release, the CVS stuff you can have regular iterations, but eventually you want to say, okay, this is 2.0. This is the one we want to accept. And so you can do an actual file release, which actually ends up as a news item, and it is an event that you can tell your community about. And what that also does is it triggers that file being copied over to our network. We have about 14 mirrors, getting close to 18 mirrors, around the world that have our body of work on it. So that if you are in Australia, you can download it from the Australian mirror. If you are in Germany, you can do that sort of thing. It also helps us a lot. All these people our mirror partners provide all the bandwidth for free, but they don't charge us. They happen to like their logo on there, but it allows us to serve 1.2 million files every single day, which comes out to a sustained bandwidth of something like 1.5 gigabits of data, which is a huge, if you just try to think about that. I mean, a T1, or else a DSL line or T1 is, let's say 1.5 megabits, right? A T3 is 45 megabits, right? This is 20 times more, or actually 30 times more. So it's a whole bunch of bandwidth, and we couldn't do it without our bandwidth partners that allow us to do that stuff. I think there was a question way back there, sir. I don't know. Did you still want to ask your question? Uh-huh. Right. Yeah, it's something that, like I said, our community is very excited about having it. When I sent out an email saying, what would you like to the top 100 projects, that was easily the #1 request of anything, any of the services that we provide. But it's worked out well for you. That's good. That's good. It's good to know. Traffic on Sourceforge.net continues to grow at a crazy pace. Don't look at the dates down at the below because it's kind of a futuristic moving forward. But the slope is about right. Every month we pretty much do a lot more traffic than we did before. We're doing more traffic than IBM.com, Sun.com. And that's just because of the huge growth of open source software. I don't know, our stat system was down, I don't know. So on any given day, and I've already gone through this stuff, we do about 10 million page views. That's both the project home pages and the ones that have all the tools on them. 1.2 million emails go out. That's from the 25,000 mailing lists that we have. Of course, the whole spam thing's a big problem. About 1.4 million downloads. These are people consuming the software that's hosted on the site. And we already talked about the amount of bandwidth. We add 700 new registered users every single day, 70 new open source projects every single day. And that has been pretty much linear. We haven't seen it grow. We haven't seen it fall. It has been pretty much every day. I can pretty much tell you where we're going to be 6 months from now within a very small margin, just because for whatever reason it's been very linear growth. And I guess that probably says something about the open source movement in general. And we get traffic from 190 countries. I already mentioned that. So busy stuff. So what I want to do now is we're still at the first bullet point of how you can consume open source software in your enterprise. I wanted just to mention a few projects that were projects of the month on Sourceforge.net over the past 2 years that I think could be an interesting solution for you and your company. So #1 is Sugar CRM. It's a CRM package, a consumer relationship management package that allows you to keep track of your sales team, your customer base, pretty much everything you need to do to run your business. And if any company who's trying to grow has a sales team, has a sales force, and is trying to keep track of where their sales are coming from, Sugar CRM can do that. This company is interesting in that it's a hybrid. It's not only a pure open source program, but they're trying to make a business out of it. So they're selling, I think they're trying to build appliances. You just buy the box and stick it on there. An ASP model where they'll run it for you, and it's similar to Salesforce.com. Anyway, it's been very, very popular, and if you're looking for a CRM package, definitely worth taking a look at. Second program is Mailman. Mailman is what we use internally to run our 25,000 mailing lists. It's a great program that you install, and you can basically have people subscribe to lists, unsubscribe, be in digest mode, not in digest mode, and it's a great way to do that. It's been flawless for us, and it's something that I highly recommend. If within your company or within your organization you want a lot of people to communicate back and forth via email, I would definitely check out Mailman. Next one is JBoss. I was just actually on a panel at Stanford 2 days ago with the president of JBoss. So this is another one of these programs where they're trying to build a business out of it. And it's interesting. It's basically a J2EE application server. So, and it competes with IBM's WebSphere, BEA's WebLogic. These are software packages that cost thousands of dollars. And JBoss, of course, you can download for free. It's Sun compliant or Java compliant. And we have a program called Sourceforge Enterprise Edition, which is a J2EE application, and it works flawlessly on top of JBoss. So if you're looking for a J2EE application server, I highly recommend you take a look at JBoss. Squirrel Mail. This is kind of a fun one. It is a program that allows you to put a web front end on top of your mail system so that, yes? Yeah, it's a great program. I use that on my own system. And basically, you put this on here. You basically say, look, it's an IMAP server. This is how you want to work. And instantly, everybody in your company has a Yahoo Mail or a Hotmail looking with no ads, which is always good. And you don't have to even worry about that 1 gigabyte limit. You can go as far as you want, as long as you have the disk space. But this is a mail system that you can use in your enterprise that gives everybody great web access, and it's got plugins, so you can have spell checkers and spam filters and all sorts of other things. A great app. I know it's tough. Well, you know, you start sending around 10 gigabyte files, it builds up like that. All right, here's another one. Now this is Azurus or Azurius. This is one that may not seem an obvious one for being part of the enterprise. This is a BitTorrent client, and BitTorrent clients, if you don't know, allow people to download large files. It's been in the press a lot lately because people like to download movies. Movies are large files, and oftentimes illegally. So it's gotten a lot of controversy there. But it allows you, let's say you have well, let me explain what it does. Instead of downloading the file from one single source, where you have one download server, and you have, let's say, 10,000 people trying to get to a file, it's a problem, right? Because the file may be let's say 200 megabytes, right? Well, you have 10,000 people trying to download that, it just crunches the server. I'll explain this in a second, then I'll let you ask. What this allows you to do is kind of do a two-way thing. As one person starts downloading an initial file, people who start downloading it as well will download it not only from that initial server, but from all the other people who are downloading it simultaneously. So you can have literally one machine with one copy of it, but your bandwidth usage is amazingly low. Because as more people download it, the faster it gets, because they're not only downloading it, they're also uploading it to other peers. And that's one of the reasons why it's been a great tool for movies, right? Because a person with not a lot of bandwidth can just get the thing started, and it will go. But as an enterprise tool, if you are trying to get, let's say, a PDF of your catalog that you have to put out once every month, and you happen to have, let's say it's for airplane parts, right? Color photographs of parts, I'm making this up, but let's just say that. And it happens to be multiple gigabytes of data, and you have X amount of customers out here, it can be very, very expensive to distribute that software to all these different people. Using a tool like this, any of the BitTorrent clients, and this one in particular, it is a great way to do it. This program happens to be our #1 downloaded application. We serve over 100,000 files every single day of this particular program on the site that's being used around the world. Aha. It's not a bad idea to do. I will say that there's one malicious reason. Well, I don't know, malicious, but we have 1.2 million people downloading files. It doesn't cost us anything today to have people download the files. When you download files, what do you see? You see ads, right? So, and we make money selling ads. So we haven't gotten any complaints from people saying your mirror is too slow. At one point, when we were just starting out Sourceforge and we were growing at this ridiculous ramp-up rate, we had about 20 megabits for the entire thing. Downloads, everything else, and it was a big problem. And so it would have been a great solution at that point. And then we started we moved everything to a cage, co-location cage, and we had more bandwidth. And then things ramped up more, and it got very expensive. But then we started to basically work with these partners, which has been a great asset to us because it provides great quality of service for our customers, a little bit of revenue for us, and we are able to get all this software out to people. And that's true. Sure. It's interesting in that I get emails all day long. That may be an extreme thing, but at least a couple a week where people say, let's go. I'm ready to go. I want to do this stuff. Some of the reasons they're dropping off now is because we didn't have a lot of data at the time when they started. They were the early ones. And we sent them out 300 gig drives. And we now have a terabyte of data. All right, so it's a problem. So they are slowly upgrading. So Easy News is a good example. They had a 300 megabyte system. A gigabyte, excuse me. And so they are now coming back online within the next week or so with like 1.2 terabytes. So they'll be able to grow with us. But we've had no shortage of people saying we want to do this. Why? Because a lot of ISPs have extra bandwidth, right? They've built a headroom. And so it's no real cost to them. Also, they have peering arrangements, which is great because it allows them to, peer properly or however those arrangements work. So it's been good for them as well, and they get advertising. They get 1 million people a day looking at their logo with links to it, so it's all good. Tight VNC. Tight VNC is a great app that allows you to be able to view another screen either next door or across the world. It is I think an open standard. Tight VNC is uses VNC, which is, but it's encrypted. So they're not encrypted. It's compressed. So if you're on a dial-up or a slow connection, it will go faster. But you've heard of PC Anywhere and all these other apps out there that do this. This is an open source solution. It's been around for a long time. And there's VNC clients and servers for just about every major platform. In fact, I think the Palm Pilot has one. So you can use your Macintosh to look at your Palm Pilot screen, and you can go back and forth and do all sorts of other things like that. Great app there. Oh. Killed it. That's not good. I've got more slides. There's no windows here, please. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have all the... Timbuktu has things where you can do file downloads, This is just primarily screen sharing. Yeah. I'm sure there are. There's pretty much... So no, is it turning on? Did I hear a fan? Oh, really? Yeah, I'll do that a sec. Is there anything coming out of it, though? Thank you. All right, let's see here. I'm trying. Ah, so good. So where did you lose me? Which slide was it? Was it this one? All righty. Game. Game is our #1 most active project on SourceForge.net. It is an amazing, fantastic multi-protocol instant message client. Supports MSN, MSN, Yahoo, AOL, IRC, Jabber, and then like ICQ. Oh, wow, this is good. Anyway, fantastic program. It is in a lot of Linux distributions. You download Red Hat or anything else, it is there. It's a great way to have a buddy list that has all the different people that you talk to. Even it doesn't matter what protocol they're on. It's great for a lot of instant messages is business related, so it's a good way to use that too. It's been our most active project for years now, and has probably about 50,000 downloads every single day. So very, very popular. Okay, #2. That was number one. But the other two aren't as long. Develop open source software within your company. Why would you want to do this? Why would you want to write software within your company and just give it away? How does that make sense? Well, as I think most of you know, we have a dentist convention down the hallway there. And they probably all have to buy software to manage their practices, right? The billing and which tooth is decayed and all sorts of other things. And it's expensive, and it's expensive to maintain, and it's expensive for them to be a part of that and buy this custom software. Imagine if somebody there decided, hey, wouldn't it be great if all of us got together and we each pitched a little money or a developer and worked together to make a software package that would work for all of us. Right? Wouldn't that be great? Because then we don't have to pay the maintenance fees. If somebody in Germany wants to use it, they can translate it into German as well. We keep getting more and more features, more functionality, and it lowers our cost. So you can leverage the community and other companies with open source software to basically lower your development costs. And you can also take the source code that's already out there today, one of those 93,000 applications or from some other place, and enhance it to meet your specific needs for your specific company. And that's very powerful. So, of course, on Sourceforge.net, it's very easy. All you need to do is create an account on Sourceforge, and then if you say, look, it's going to be an open source program, after you log in, it says register a project here. Again, we get 70 of these a day. You have to pick which open source license you want, and you want to say, hey, I'm ready to start collaborating. And so you can get other people together. Yes? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a good question, actually. We've had a lot of studies done, a lot of doctoral presentations. I get probably 4 or 5 requests for data dumps of our stuff so that they can write papers on there. The Boston Consulting Group did a very big piece to explain why people use open source, how they were using it, what firms they were in, how they were using it. I think if you go to osdn.com/BCG, there's a paper there you can find out about that. I don't have any stats ready just to throw out at you, other than we've gotten so many requests that I'm now working with a professor at Notre Dame, because it's very time-consuming for us to get these requests coming in saying, hey, I'd love to have all your statistical data. I want your project data. I want all this stuff because I want to do a paper on this thing. And so what we've decided to do is basically give the data to one person, and they can work with all the researchers, and we get things from all over the world so that he can make all this research happen. That's true. Well, it is possible. I mean, we do have a start date, registration date. We have a software map that categorizes the 93,000 applications. So if you want to do your own research, for instance, you could actually page scrape Sourceforge, although you have to do it very slowly, because if you do it more than just a few hits every so often, it'll ban you. Because people try to do that, and it ruins the performance for everybody else, which is a big problem. Let's see here. So anyway, if you want to register a project on Sourceforge.net, create an account, hit the button. You have to go through a 10-page form, but then you'll be ready to go, and then you can start working with all your dental friends to create a fabulous package that will lower your cost and their cost. And because you're not competing, it's not a they're not in business to sell dental software. This is just a cost for them. There's a real benefit for companies and for government agencies and everything else to work together to lower the cost of software for everyone else. All right, number 3, use open source methodologies in your enterprise. We talked about open source before, at the very first couple slides, how it differs from what they call the cathedral building of software, where you get 10 guys in a room and they all work for a year and a half and they say, ha-ha, here we go, here's the software package. And it may help, it may meet the customer demands, it may not. But open source is quite good. It's been proven many, many times. If you look at Linux, Apache, OpenOffice, or any of the applications that we have on Sourceforge.net. This very close iteration, this transparency where people are able to see the software being developed and being able to make feedback as it happens, it can be very, very useful. So what would happen if you actually you did that internally within your own corporation? So let's just think about the ways open source and enterprise work together. Well, they both need to communicate. They both need to talk. The developers and a lot of corporations are multinational, right? Large companies like IBM have developers all over the world, and you'll find if you talk to any company that has a lot of people in it, that they are all doing the same work. They don't realize what's happening, right? The German team's working on something, the Finland team's working on, well, maybe the same thing. They don't know. And once people leave, you oftentimes lose that body of work. It's a big problem. They need to be flexible. The timing, the changes happen. If you're doing the cathedral type of thing where you're making changes or you're coming out with a release every 18 months, can be a big problem. And you want to avoid reinventing the wheel. So we talked about this. So the open source development model, these virtual teams, these people who are all over the world can work together. They can be geographically dispersed. They can leverage the internet, right? So if you're IBM, you can basically work with, instead of having multiple teams working on the same thing, not realizing what's happening, you can centralize that. Just like tools like Sourceforge.net and other tools like that can do that. It's obviously lower cost if you do it that way. If you allow people to look at your source code in your company, it can be beneficial. You get better code. More eyeballs, the better the code's going to be. You get that fast iterative process because as you keep coming out with new versions, people within your company can download it and use that sort of thing. And of course, people can work on multiple projects because it's transparent and whatnot. It makes things easy. And you use the tools that, for instance, on Sourceforge.net, can be very beneficial. One thing is, particularly during the bubble days, there were a lot of consultants hired, very expensive consultants because no one could find employees. I work in Silicon Valley, where basically people were giving away cars. Come work here, but there was a lot of turnover. And so what would happen is you end up with a couple of consultants working on some code, and they've got it on their Sun workstation or whatever, and they work on a whole bunch of stuff. And then they decide, well, pay over at this company and consulting work is better. Well, the drive disappears, right? There goes all their work. If you can consolidate all that stuff, like, for instance, on Sourceforge.net, we don't delete any data, right? So if there's any work happening on a program, you can always see, you can go back and see the history from version 1 all the way up to version 7.4. And you can find out who worked on it. If the consultant worked on it, there's all the changes that he or she made. Here's the emails he or she wrote. And somebody who is new to the process can really look at that knowledge base and be able to do that. So I'm going to do a brief sales pitch here, is that besides, is time to pause? It is time to pause. To change the tape. Yeah. Now has bloated into this whole thing, and I want to use it on my PDA that only has so much memory space. Well, if I went back 5 years, I could see that there's a copy of Emacs that does in fact work on my PDA. You could actually do that sort of thing. So, and also, a lot of things, as we talked about when you consume software. Are we back on? Oh, great. Okay. That's interesting. Very good. What we want to do is we want to allow people to leverage other people's works, right? So while the project itself may not be that active, let's say it's a dental program, right? Let's say, there were 15 developers who worked on this package, and they decided, well, it's not going to work for us after all. It doesn't meet the needs. There's something wrong with it, or people never adopted it. Right? Well, that's a problem. Well, but the code is still good. And maybe there's another practice. Maybe there's another, 2 years later, another dental group shows up and says, wow, this is exactly what we were trying to write. And look, a third of it's already done, or half of it's already done. Or maybe it's a company that, maybe another company that has a service like a dental service, right? Let's say you might find out that a haircut company has has a barbershop or whatever wants to have a lot of the same types of records that a dental company has, you know, name, address, city. And maybe there's some things in there that make sense, and so they can adopt the stuff that somebody else has done that for the dental profession and then migrate it to theirs. So we do delete projects, but this is how we do it. It has to be at least 6 months old. It has to have no activity for 6 months. I mean, not a bug track, no anything like that. And 3, it has never released any source code. If it has released any source code whatsoever, we keep it because it is the foundation for somebody else to build on top of stuff. Now that sometimes causes problems for people because it's hard to find things on sourceforge.net. We have a lot of projects on there, and to find something that's maybe, you know, something usable, sometimes it's hard. We've gotten, you know, so we're trying to find new ways to help people navigate. It worked great when we had 2,000 projects. We have 100,000 projects now. We have to figure out ways for people to get to the source code, and or if you're a professional and you don't want to write source code, you want to use source code, you want to use a program, we allow people to easily get to that. So besides the network of sites that we have, Slashdot, NewsForge, Linux.com, ThinkGeek, Sourceforge, Slashdot, I think I'm repeating myself, where we do 16 million unique visitors a month. We also have a commercial product called Sourceforge Enterprise 4.1. It's a complete rewrite of the software that we have on Sourceforge.net. Sourceforge.net is completely written in PHP. It's got a little Python on the back end. But Sourceforge Enterprise Edition is a J2EE application, completely rewritten. But it uses the same methodologies that Sourceforge.net has. It has the bug tracker and the version control stuff, although you're able to use multiple source code version control systems. It also supports multiple databases, so it does DB2 and Oracle and Postgres and a number of other ones. But basically allows you to basically install this behind your firewall and allow you to use the best practices of open source, so you can develop software, whether it's open or not open, behind your firewall and make it private. Well, this in some ways goes against the open source way of thinking. There are companies who don't want to release their source code, so we want to provide a tool to allow them to learn from open source and use that methodology to have those fast reiterations and make that better. So anyway, I think I went through all this stuff. It's a pretty sophisticated application. Yes. The question is, do we have any plans to move SFEE, we like to call it the Enterprise Edition, over to Sourceforge.net? And excuse me. Right. And the answer is, at this point, no. SourceForge Enterprise has a lot of things in it that the open source community doesn't need. Right? SourceForge.net is completely open. SourceForge Enterprise has a whole bunch of permissions and tools that are great for the enterprise, but from almost like a scalability perspective, makes it harder to roll out to 1 million people a day. There's not many companies that are at that scale. So it has a lot of functionality, a lot of reporting features. It will migrate directly with Microsoft Project, which is pretty cool. So you work with Microsoft Project, you hit a button, and your entire plan will move into the web-based version of SourceForge Enterprise. You make changes back to that. You can export it back to Microsoft Project. It is made to work with the tools you already have in the enterprise, where SourceForge.net is meant to work with itself. Right? We have a community of people that we want to do stuff. We've talked about it a lot. We thought the cost to migrate stuff over, and because it's really geared towards different things, it makes it hard. Yeah. It was. That's pretty much the deal. There has been, not recently, but certainly when we closed it. I mean, we are an open source website. We should have the software that runs the website be open source as well. I mean, we ended up closing it, and we didn't make a lot of friends, and I didn't feel good about it, to be honest. But the reason why we did it was we were having some problems. We were trying to do the service model, very similar to what JBoss is trying to do today, where we give you the software for free, and then we go in and we work to modify it for you or train your staff and customize it. And we found out that customers were in fact downloading it by the droves, which was great. But they were like, no, we don't need your service. You know, we can do this in-house. Thanks very much. We don't need to spend that money. And the CEO of the company basically said, you know, if we want to be around, we have to change the model. And it was something that was a tough sell to everybody, the community, to people inside the company. But ultimately, that's what we did. There's certainly other software packages like Sourceforge. I can think of one that's very close to the code base. In fact, it's a fork off of the open source version, and that exists today, and you can download it. Excuse me, I'm running out of my voice is starting to go. But you can download that today as well, and so there's lots of solutions out there. Okay. Very good. Well, I've only got a couple of slides left. Anyway, Sourceforge Enterprise Edition, as it stands today with the J2EE thing, has been a very great success. We've got it into a lot of Fortune 500 companies, including IBM, Hewlett-Packard, Sony, Pfizer. What else do we have here? Sun Microsystems, which is interesting because they're also a investor in Collab, which is a competitor of ours. And on and on and on. So that companies have seen the value of using the open source methodologies within their actual companies, and that's why they're turning to us because we have a lot of experience with that, with Sourceforge.net being the largest open source repository. So during the past hour and 5 minutes, which means we have some question and answer stuff to do, I've talked about 3 things. I've talked about using open source in your company. There's 93,000 applications on Sourceforge.net. There's many applications that's not on Sourceforge.net. A good place to look for that is on our sister site, freshmeat.net. You can download stuff there, and it will list not only the stuff that's on Sourceforge, which is quite a bit, but also things on the Apache Foundation and all sorts of other places. So if you want to use open source in your enterprise, take a look at what's already been written. There's a lot of great stuff out there that you can get. To develop it, if you're you're running a dentistry and you want to lower your costs, work with other people, other peers within your your series of companies to basically lower the cost and improve things. If it's not a mission critical application, meaning you're not trying to generate true money on that, but it's a cost for you, working with other companies has a lot of value to that. And third, use the methodologies of open source within your enterprise so that you can write software faster, and that's more efficient. That's less bugs in it, and will just be better all around. Use the success of open source in your company. Finally, I mentioned the open source definition on I think slide 3. How do you find out more about it? If you're not familiar with open source, you can download it, or you can go to their the opensource.org website that has the open source definition on it. Explains the theory behind open source, a lot of white papers on open source, all 40 licenses or so. 55. We've got to update our pull-down menu for the license you can choose on Sourceforge.net, but it tends to grow a little bit. That's not a bad idea. We should talk. Anyway, I'd like to take Q&A if you happen to have it. So Sourceforge.net today runs under PHP. It was written in PHP. We were selling a commercial version of Sourceforge Enterprise, also written in PHP. And then, as I mentioned, we rewrote the entire thing in Java. The company, in a lot of ways, is 2 separate companies. There's the OSTG, which is all the websites, Slashdot and all the other ones. And then there's the enterprise side, selling essentially proprietary software. I'm on the OSTG side, so I wasn't in all the discussions that that were there. I will say that I know there was feedback from customers, corporate customers, Fortune 100, 500 customers, which may not be true today, but was true when they were talking to them now, that they consider PHP to be a scripting language, right? Well, it is a scripting language. It's a very powerful scripting language that runs a lot of very large websites. Yahoo uses it and a lot of other sites. So it is very powerful, and but they wanted to go with something that was enterprise ready, so then when they went into a corporate client, they could do that. Also, a lot of the permission systems and stuff they had, they wanted to do much more object-oriented stuff, which at the time, I mean, PHP 5 has a lot more object-oriented stuff in it. But J2EE is built up from the ground up from that stuff. And with the application layer and being able to build on top of multiple databases very easily, JBoss, you just go, click on there and be able to choose whatever database you want. That added transparency, which to the developers seemed interesting to them. Whether, can PHP run the enterprise side? I don't think there's any reasons why it can't. But I wasn't in all the marketing decisions where they said this is why we need to go this way. Let's see, well, 4.0 or 4.1 has been out for about a year. So there was a development process probably about 2 years into that. So I would say it was about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. Yes? Well, thank you. That's true. I think C is, Java's very high, and of course there's all the scripting languages, Python, Perl, PHP. Well, that's a good question. Before they launched the Java DevNet, Java.net, I really am losing my voice. Denise Cooper actually approached us and said, look, we're going to build this thing. She works at Sun. We'd really like to host it on OSTG. Will you help us? And for reasons I won't bore you with, we decided not to bid for the business. The reason why she wanted to go to OSTG, at the time it was called OSDN, was because we have the community, 16 million unique visitors. We have a lot of stuff on there. And you can probably go back and read articles where people say, is this are you competing with Sourceforge.net? And basically the answer is no, we're not competing with Sourceforge.net. That said, we always want to improve the tools that are on the site. We want to use Subversion. We want to increase the tools so that we continue to add functionality and features that developers are going to want. We're not direct, with the SFEE stuff, there's a real big competitive thing, right? We're going after CollabNet, we're going after a few other ones. On SourceForge.net, I mean, really the basis of the site was to give back to the community. And so I don't ever see us competing with anyone. It's really everybody's leveraging the work from everyone else. But I do want the experience on SourceForge.net to be as good as possible. And, we have a very small staff. Well, actually, it's a good question for you. So we have 10 million page views a day. We're one of the top 100 projects in the world. We have over 1.2 million downloads. How big do you think the staff is of SourceForge.net? 85 people. Answer is 5. 5 people. And basically, all 70 project requests that come in to create a new project on SourceForge.net, each one of those is done by hand. We go through each one of those to make sure. We get over 115 support requests every single day that have to go through. We have 2 people on the support team. We have 1 DBA. We have 1.5 engineers. One's a contractor. And then that's pretty much it. They don't sleep much. People work many, many hours. Actually, here's another great thing about open source. So OSTG, right? 16 million users, 250 million page views every day. One of the top networks in the world. We have 250 Linux-based servers that power Slashdot, FreshMeet, and everything else. How many NetOps people do you think we have company-wide? They actually also do the phone system for us, too. 3. So it's a great success story. I mean, other than that, they don't actually want to talk to the press because they're working. Yes. It's a good question. Yes, Stuart Cohen from OSDL and I have talked about this because we do have hundreds of gigabytes of source code, and a lot of this stuff is great algorithms, great search routines, great all sorts of other things. And you'll have proprietary companies where, maybe next year they'll say, "Aha! I have come out with this wonderful search algorithm that has never been invented before, and I'm going to patent it, and nobody else in the world can use it." Right? Well, that's a problem. But if they can go back and say, well, project 10,232, which is Game happens to have a sort algorithm for doing the buddy list, right? And it happens to be exactly that same search algorithm that the proprietary company in 1 year from now is going to try to do. So it's a great thing where someone can say, well, here's the prior art. We actually have the MD5 thing with this, and we've published it. We put it as a CD in a vault or something like that, and to prevent people from doing just that. We don't have anything like that right now. We have been talking to Stuart because he sees a big need for that. We see a big need. We've talked to companies in the past, although those companies actually wanted to make it a business venture. Have the source, have the project, give us $100, we'll publish it in a book. It reminded me a little bit like the star registry. You ever see that during Christmas? Register a star, right? They put it in a book and they charge you $80. Right? It doesn't really mean anything. But what we want to do is something that's going to be defensible in a court of law, and it would be a great thing to do. We're moving slowly, actually too slowly. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Very nice. Let's see. Other questions regarding? Yes. I'm sorry. Which list? Yeah, 3. We have a software map. We've got like 8 different categories that you can search and filter for. So you can search by language, by type of software, by maturity. Is it alpha, beta? Of course, all that is chosen by the project admin. So the license as well. It's pretty good. I mean, I think we can make it a little better, but it's not bad. I mean, you can filter over 3 different categories. So like you said, you can say, look, I'm looking for dental products that are written in Python that have they use a GPL, and bang, there it is. As far as searching for stuff, I mean, with 93,000 applications, we have everything from the National Institute of Health for curing cancer, different projects like that. Everything from improving your golf game on a Palm Pilot. So the software range is immense. Yes. It sucks, I know. Well, if you were a subscriber at $39 a year, all right. Appreciate it. I appreciate it. So although we haven't announced it, we've been looking very seriously at Lucene, which is a Java-based search engine that can do a lot of things. Right now, we have kind of a 2-tiered search. If you are a subscriber, which is one of the ways we try to raise money, you get a little bit better searching. You can do some Boolean searching and stuff. If you're not, then you get to use the regular search, which with 93,000 apps is not always as good as you want. For a while there, you couldn't search for, you had to have at least 3 characters, or 4 characters, I think. And so C++ was a disaster, right? You're like, I want to search for that. It wouldn't work. So anyway, that's getting better too. Lucene will do a lot. We're testing that right now, making sure it can deal with our load. It's it's something where if there's a scale problem, we're going to hit it. Oh yeah. Exactly. Any other questions? It's a good question. I met with Martin Fink, who is the VP of Linux for HP. Flew out to Colorado last Wednesday to meet with him, and I was trying to get feedback from him, and he basically said the problem with Sourceforge today is there's just too much stuff, right? I'm an IT professional. I can't get people to find the IT stuff that they want, right? There's plenty of things in there. But you want, IT professionals want things like Sugar CRM, right? It's mature. We know it works. You don't want something that's half-baked. And so we're coming up with something called channels, which are like foundries, but basically micro-communities around a particular topic, a vertical, if you will, where those top projects of that particular vertical, such as Tetris or whatever, can bubble up to the top and say, these are completed projects, they're mature, they are being installed in major corporations, and you should take a look at them. And we can do it 2 different ways. We can either have a volunteer or a paid person go through all the different projects and say, I think this one's good, I think this one's good, and this is great. Or we can do a sort of more of a karma type thing, where people can say, Sugar CRM, this thing is great, I love it, I give it 5 stars, or I give it something like that, and it bubbles up to the top that way. So, which would be great, because there's more verticals than I'm going to be able to find volunteers. And so we can very easily say that, find those things, and that's what Martin Fink wanted to hear, is that there was going to be a way to bubble that stuff up, and that's what we plan to do. Because they can find it. Yep, that's true. We don't mind people coming out with new versions, because sometimes they do it better, or sometimes they'll fork something else out there. But you do want to find the ones that are worth looking at. Fresh Meat does have reviews today, and of course it'll list many of the projects that are on Sourceforge, not all the projects, but it also is more than just Sourceforge projects. So there is peer review there. You can get that, there's no problem with that, and then you can get peer review, and so people need to know to look at Fresh Meat as a place, and there has to be enough people doing reviews to make it worthwhile to do. Fresh Meat, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we've been, as I mentioned, working with a researcher at Notre Dame to do that. But if you want that, Fresh Meat does in fact provide that data in XML format, so you can download it. It is essentially the same tree that we have. We have just slight differences, but you can get that. Well, they are very slight. I mean, I would say that 95% of it's the same. Just sometimes Scoop, who runs Fresh Meat's, he'll get an email from somebody and say, I really wish you supported this language, which only 3 people use. And we don't get a copy of that email on top of that, so he'll put that in there, and then at some point we have to kind of merge the 2 together. But you can download the XML version of that. Well, great. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time. I'm going to be here, the whole conference. So if you see me around and you have a question, feel free to come up and ask away. So thank you very much. can have a copy if you'd like.